Have you ever had one of those mornings where you wake up and something just feels different? Not around you, inside you. Like a quiet whisper says, there's got to be more than this. That's the beginning. The first stage of spiritual awakening. And no, it doesn't arrive the same way for everyone. For some people, it hits like lightning, sudden and life-altering. Maybe it's losing someone you love, going through a serious illness, or a relationship falling apart. For others, it creeps in like a breeze through a window you didn't realize was open. A lingering unease, a question you can't unask. No matter how it begins, this awakening doesn't wait for permission. It just happens. Suddenly, the life you've been living starts to feel off. Not bad necessarily, just insufficient. Like you've been in a dark room and someone lit a tiny candle. That little flame doesn't show everything, but now you know there's more out there. And you can't go back to thinking the dark is all there is. You might start noticing that things you once cared about don't excite you anymore. Conversations that used to be fun now seem hollow. Career goals, social media likes, chasing status, it all starts to feel meaningless. And then there's that voice in your head that wasn't there before, quietly wondering, why am I doing all this? It can be isolating. You're not physically alone, but there's this strange feeling like nobody else really gets what you're going through. Honestly, you're not even sure you understand it yourself. That's a hallmark of this early stage. Something inside is shifting, but you can't quite explain it. You just know that something's waking up. And your body might start reacting too. Maybe your sleep changes, you're suddenly exhausted or wide awake at all hours. Maybe sounds, colors, and emotions hit harder. It's like your senses are tuning in to a frequency you didn't know existed. You might ask yourself, why is this happening now? There's no one-size-fits-all answer, but generally, this happens when your soul is ready to evolve. Maybe it follows a period of intense stress, or maybe it emerges during a moment of peace, when your defenses are finally down. Not everyone wakes up like this. Some people live their whole lives asleep, going through the motions, never questioning anything. Others wake up a little, and then choose to go back to sleep. Because, let's face it, awakening can feel inconvenient, even scary, but the ones who move forward, they don't do it because it's easy. They do it because something inside won't let them stay the same. There's a pull towards something more real, and that pull is stronger than the fear of the unknown. If this sounds like where you're at right now, I want you to know, you're not broken. You're not going crazy. You're just waking up. You're beginning to sense a deeper reality. One that was always there, just outside your field of vision. Now, it's breaking through. This is the moment the seed gets planted. You can't see the tree yet. You don't know how big it will grow. But something irreversible has already begun. There's no going back to sleep. The journey ahead isn't always smooth, but it is the most honest, most alive path you've ever walked. And if you're starting to feel like there's more to you than you've ever realized, I've got something you might find helpful. I wrote a book called The Book of the Soul. It's a guide, 7 portals designed to help you navigate this journey of self-discovery. Inside, you'll learn how to interpret the signs your soul is sending, access your Akashic records, and start remembering your mission here on Earth. Plus, when you get the book, I've included 3 bonus tools: an energetic protection guide, a personalized astrological soul map, and your own oracle reading. People who've read it are already reporting powerful shifts, rediscovering their purpose, reconnecting with their truth, and finally understanding why they're here. If you're curious, the link's in the pinned comment below. But no pressure. Just know this, the fact that you're even asking these questions means you're on the path, and the path always knows where to take you. So maybe you've had that first spark, that subtle or seismic shift that made you realize something deeper was calling you. And maybe, like many people, you assumed things would start making sense from here. That once you wake up, clarity would flood in like sunlight after a long night. But here's the twist. The second stage of spiritual awakening feels more like everything falling apart. This is the deconstruction phase. It's the part where your old beliefs, the ones you built your life on, begin to crumble. The stories you told yourself about who you are, what's important, what's true, they stop holding water. Maybe the religion you followed since childhood feels too small now. Maybe the social norms you used to follow seem arbitrary or hollow. Or maybe the roles you've played, partner, parent, employee, start to feel like costumes you forgot you were wearing. It's disorienting, because our minds are wired for structure. We rely on these roles, beliefs, and routines to feel safe, to know who we are. And when those start to fall apart, you can feel like you're dissolving with them. And in a way, you are. This stage strips away the old identity, one that was built from the outside in. An identity shaped by what others expected of you, what society rewarded, and what you believed would earn love or success. Now those structures collapse. And that brings us to stage 3, confusion. Big time. This is often described as the dark night of the soul. It's when nothing makes sense anymore. You wake up, stare at the ceiling and think, who even am I? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? Decisions that used to feel easy suddenly seem impossible. Even little things, like what to wear or where to go, can feel like too much. But listen closely. This chaos isn't a failure. It's not proof that you're doing something wrong. It's exactly what's supposed to happen. Think of a caterpillar inside its cocoon. It doesn't just sprout wings and fly away. It literally dissolves into goo. It turns into a soupy mess of cells before reorganizing into a completely new creature. That's what your consciousness is doing right now. You're not breaking, you're transforming. Of course, your body might be freaking out too. Headaches, insomnia, digestive changes, random emotional waves, these are all common. It's like your system is trying to process new energy without the old framework to hold it. Emotionally, you might cry out of nowhere, or feel waves of sadness, anger, or fear that don't seem tied to anything in particular. That's the energy of old beliefs leaving your body. It's not comfortable, but it's necessary. The key here isn't to resist. The more you fight this stage, try to hold on to your old identity or make sense of the chaos, the more painful it gets. What helps? Grounding. Not to stop the process, but to help you move through it without completely unraveling. Things like meditation, nature walks, journaling, sitting still and breathing deeply. Anything that reconnects you to this moment, to your body, to the earth, to something real. And while it may feel like you're falling apart, the truth is, you're being set free. Every belief that breaks is making space for something truer. Every mask that falls off brings you closer to your authentic self. This stage teaches one of the most important lessons of the entire journey. You don't have to understand everything right now. You don't have to understand everything right now. You don't have to have it all figured out. In fact, the not knowing is part of the sacred process. The old you is dissolving. The new you hasn't taken full form yet. And that in-between space? That's where magic happens. So if you feel like you're lost right now, if life feels confusing or upside down, you're not broken. You're in the cocoon. And yes, it's messy in here. Yes, it's hard. But one day soon, you're going to look back and realize this was the moment everything started to change, for real. So you've been through the breakdown. The walls came down. The old beliefs cracked. The roles you used to play no longer fit. You've sat in the confusion, maybe even drifted through the dark night of the soul. And then, something shifts again. You get hungry. Not for food, but for meaning. This is stage 4, the spiritual hunger. It's like an engine turns on inside you, and suddenly you need answers. You need to understand. The old ways aren't enough anymore, but you don't quite know the new path yet, so you start searching. And you search hard. You might binge read books on spirituality, consciousness, energy healing, past lives. You might start watching hours of YouTube videos about meditation, chakras, mysticism, or quantum physics. You'll probably try different spiritual practices: tarot, yoga, breathwork, sound baths, plant medicine, astrology, crystals, maybe all in the same week. It's intense. It's exciting. It feels like you're discovering a secret world that was hidden in plain sight. And honestly, it's necessary. This part of the journey is like building a new inner toolkit. You're collecting knowledge, tools, techniques, insights, trying to figure out which ones resonate with you, which ones feel true. But there's a catch. It's easy to become a spiritual collector, to bounce from one practice to another, hoping the next one will finally fix you or unlock that last missing piece. You start chasing spiritual experiences the way some people chase success or dopamine. You go from yoga in the morning to a past life regression at lunch and maybe a moon ritual at night. And while all of those things can be beautiful and powerful, there's a subtle trap here. Your ego might still be running the show. Instead of chasing money or image or achievements, your ego's now chasing enlightenment. Same engine, different fuel. So how do you know if you're caught in the spiritual shopping phase? You're constantly trying new practices but not sticking with any of them. You feel like you need to experience everything before you can move forward. You get impatient when a practice doesn't produce immediate results. You feel anxious if you're not progressing fast enough on your spiritual path. The truth is, this hunger is valid. This search is necessary. But it's not about finding the perfect practice or the perfect guru. It's about deepening your relationship with yourself. Every teaching, every ritual, every meditation is an opportunity to listen in, to check in with your own inner knowing. It's not about how many tools you collect. It's about which ones actually help you hear your soul more clearly. So here are some tips for navigating this phase without getting overwhelmed. Choose one or two core practices and stick with them. Give them time to unfold before jumping to the next thing. Check your motivation. Are you genuinely curious, or are you trying to run from discomfort? Practice discernment. Just because something is spiritual doesn't mean it's aligned with you. Not every trend, teacher, or technique is meant for your path. Stay grounded. Keep at least one foot in the real world. Spirituality isn't about escaping life. It's about living it more fully. And here's the beautiful thing. The more you explore, the more your search starts to slow down. Not because you're giving up, but because you begin to realize something. Everything you were looking for out there, it was already within you. The panic softens. The desperate seeking turns into a more intuitive unfolding. Instead of chasing the truth, you begin to recognize it when it quietly appears. This is the moment you begin preparing for the next phase, one that's not about collecting more answers, but about becoming the answer. The first real glimpses of something deeper are just around the corner. After the searching, the workshops, the meditations, the books, something surprising happens. You're not even looking for it, but suddenly, there it is. A moment. You're sitting in silence, or walking in nature, or even just washing dishes, and everything feels different. Time slows down. The mental noise quiets, and for a brief instant, you feel completely at peace. This is stage 5, the first glimpses of enlightenment. They don't come with fireworks or some booming voice from the sky. They're often quiet, gentle. But they change everything. You might feel a sudden sense of unity with all life, like you're not separate from the world. You are the world. Or maybe you have a profound insight that drops into your awareness, like a truth you've always known, but somehow forgot. It's hard to explain these moments with words, because they're beyond the mind. But once you've had one, you just know. This isn't about theory anymore. It's direct experience. You've read about higher consciousness, you've heard people talk about oneness and presence, but now you've felt it. And that changes the game. But here's the catch. These experiences don't last. Not yet. After feeling that expanded awareness, you snap back. The old mind returns. The worries, the doubts, the ordinary world reappears. And honestly, that return can be jarring. It's like waking up from a dream that felt more real than your actual life, and then finding yourself back in a cluttered room, surrounded by bills and texts and unanswered emails. You might feel frustrated, obsessed even. You start chasing the experience, trying to get it back. You meditate more, fast longer, maybe even experiment with psychedelics or extreme practices, anything to return to that elevated state. But that's where the next trap shows up, the spiritual ego. You've tasted something sacred, and now your ego tries to own it. You start seeing yourself as someone who's awakened, maybe even a little more enlightened than the people around you. You don't mean to, but a subtle sense of separation creeps in. That's the danger here. The ego is sneaky. It doesn't die easily, it just shapeshifts. And one of its favorite disguises is spiritual superiority. Another risk is becoming addicted to the experience itself, rather than what it points to. You forget that the mystical moment was a signpost, not a destination. These glimpses are not the final stage. They're windows, previews, invitations. The real work is integration. Because what's the point of experiencing oneness if you can't bring that awareness into your daily life? How do you carry that deep peace into a tough conversation with your partner? How do you remember your connectedness when you're stuck in traffic or triggered by something on social media? That's where true awakening begins, not in the peak experiences, but in the practice of presence. That's when you start to understand. Awakening isn't a lightning strike. It's a slow burn. It's not about living in the clouds. It's about walking through life with your eyes open, your heart open, your ego quiet, and your soul leading the way. So if you've had these glimpses, if you've tasted that stillness, that clarity, celebrate it. But don't chase it. Let it soften you. Let it guide you. And most importantly, don't let it become your new identity. Because real awakening isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've been all along. So you've had a glimpse, maybe more than one. You've felt that deep, sacred stillness, that sense of unity with all things. But then life returns. And now, instead of looking outward for answers, something shifts again. You start looking inward. This is stage 6, the deep journey into the self. And let's be real, this part can feel like a descent. Because now, the light of your awareness turns inward like a spotlight, and it starts to reveal everything you've avoided. Old wounds, unprocessed emotions, patterns that don't make sense until they do. You begin to see the parts of yourself you've denied or buried. The insecurities, the fear of being unlovable, the moments from your childhood you never fully healed, the behaviors you've repeated for years without ever knowing why. And it's not easy, because these aren't just bad habits or flaws to fix. They're pieces of your psyche that were once necessary. Defense mechanisms, ways your younger self survived, but now they're outdated. They hold you back more than they protect you. This is what people in spiritual psychology call shadow work. The shadow isn't evil. It's not a monster under the bed. It's everything you've repressed or judged as unacceptable. Your rage, your shame, your neediness, your jealousy, your grief. These parts of you were pushed into the background because somewhere along the way, someone told you they weren't okay. But here's the paradox. You can't be whole by cutting pieces of yourself off. You can't fully awaken while rejecting your own humanity. True spirituality isn't about rising above everything. It's about embracing everything, the light and the shadow. And as you go deeper into yourself, you'll start to notice patterns. Maybe your relationships always end the same way. Maybe you get stuck in the same kind of work conflict over and over. Maybe you keep playing small or sabotaging your own happiness without knowing why. These aren't coincidences. They're clues. Each pattern is a thread. And when you follow it, it leads you to the original wound. Oftentimes, these wounds go all the way back to childhood. Not because we need to blame anyone, but because childhood is when our emotional blueprint was formed. That's when we learned who we had to be to feel safe, loved, or accepted. And those survival strategies, they worked. Back then. But now? They might be the very thing keeping you stuck. So what do? You witness. You stop judging your pain. You get curious about your triggers instead of ashamed of them. You begin to understand that every pattern has a root, every reaction has a history, and every flaw has a story. That's when the healing begins. Because you can't heal what you refuse to see. And once you bring those buried parts into the light, something beautiful starts to happen. You stop trying so hard to seem perfect. You stop spending energy hiding or performing. You become more you, more real, 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 more grounded. And ironically, it's this radical self-acceptance that opens the door to even deeper transformation. Here's something to keep in mind. This journey inward isn't a one-time thing. You don't go deep once and come out done. It's a spiral. Each time you peel back a layer, life shows you another. A new situation, a new relationship, a new mirror, each one revealing more of who you are and what's still waiting to be healed. Some people get stuck here. They turn self-awareness into self-obsession. They analyze endlessly, but forget to live. Don't let that be you. The point isn't to become a self-analysis expert. The point is to become free. True self-knowledge isn't just about understanding, it's about compassion. Compassion for who you were, compassion for who you're becoming, and compassion for every messy, beautiful step in between. Because when you start to embrace all of yourself, something changes. You stop fighting life, you stop fighting you. And that's when things start to open in a whole new way. So you've gone inward. You've uncovered your patterns, done the shadow work, sat with your pain. You've begun to heal, not by fixing yourself, but by finally accepting the parts of you that were always there, quietly waiting for your love. And just when you think you're getting a grip on who you really are, that idea starts to dissolve. Welcome to stage 7, the dissolution of identity. This is where things get weird. Not bad, just different. Because you start to realize something huge. The person you thought you were might not be real. At least, not in the way you believed. You've spent your whole life building a version of yourself, your likes and dislikes, your goals, your fears, your opinions, your image. It's like you've been carefully assembling a puzzle called me. But now, you start picking up those pieces and thinking, wait, do I even like this? Is this really me? Or is this who I was told to be? And that realization, it shakes the ground beneath you. You might question everything, your job, your relationships, your politics, your ambitions, even your favorite music or food. It's like you're sifting through a wardrobe and realizing half the clothes belong to someone else. This process can feel disorienting, even scary, because we humans need a sense of self. We need something to grab onto, something to say, this is who I am. But now that something is slipping through your fingers, you may experience what we call identity fluctuation. One moment, you feel grounded and clear. The next, you feel like a ghost in your own life. Nothing feels stable. Even your reflection in the mirror might feel unfamiliar. And here's the kicker. This isn't a mistake. This is the next necessary step. Because spiritual awakening isn't about upgrading your identity. It's about seeing through it. It's about realizing that most of what you thought was you was actually programming. Cultural conditioning, family expectations, childhood coping mechanisms. The ego, in this phase, isn't your enemy. It's not something to destroy. It's something to disentangle from. The ego was useful. It helped you survive, navigate, succeed. But it was never meant to be the driver of your soul. When ego leads, you live in reaction. When soul leads, you live in response. Big difference. So as your old identity starts to dissolve, it's normal to feel fear. You might wonder, If I'm not my job, my beliefs, my personality, then what's left? Who am I really? Here's the beautiful and terrifying truth. You're not losing yourself. You're losing the idea of yourself. What remains is something deeper, something fluid, something real. But before you can live from that place, you have to sit in the in-between, the void, the space where the old you has fallen away and the new you hasn't fully formed. This space is sacred. Uncomfortable? Yes. But it's where your essence, your true self, begins to emerge. During this phase, you may feel physical symptoms too. Some people experience depersonalization. Others feel like they're floating outside of their body, or like life is a movie they're watching rather than living. You may also feel a wave of existential anxiety, a sense that life is empty or meaningless. Again, this is part of the shedding. The ego needs meaning to feel safe. It needs identity to feel real. So when those things begin to dissolve, it can feel like free falling. But what's actually happening is that you're being emptied so that something truer can come through. You're not going crazy. You're coming home. And no, not everyone goes through this as a dramatic collapse. For some, it's subtle. A quiet reordering, a slow loosening of the old stories. There's no one right way to experience this, but however it unfolds, remember this: you don't need to rebuild the old self. You don't need to scramble for a new identity. You just need to be with what's arising. Let the old crumble. Let the space open. Because what's coming next? It's not just a shift in who you think you are. It's a surrender to what you really are. After all the peeling back, all the unraveling, all the breaking apart, you reach a threshold. You've exhausted every tool, every identity, every plan. And now, you're just tired. Not just I need a nap tired, but soul tired. This is stage 8, the great surrender. And it's both the hardest and the most beautiful turning point in the entire awakening process. Because up until now, even when you were letting go, there was still a part of you trying to manage the letting go, still trying to stay in control, still subtly working to steer your growth. But now, you hit the wall. You finally realize you don't know how to do this anymore. You can't force the next step. You can't figure it out. You can't think your way into truth. So you stop trying. And in that stopping, something powerful happens. You begin to surrender. Now, let's be clear. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It's not passivity. It's not apathy. True surrender is the deepest form of trust. It's a letting go, not out of defeat, but out of recognition. A recognition that there's something greater at work in your life. Call it the universe, God, source, higher self. Doesn't matter. What matters is, you begin to trust it. You stop micromanaging your growth. You stop needing every step to make sense. And you begin to flow. Of course, this isn't easy. We've been conditioned to believe that we have to be in charge, that we need a 5-year plan, that success, spiritual or otherwise, comes from effort, structure, hustle. Surrender cuts right through that. It asks you to step off the ledge without knowing if there's a net. It asks you to trust your life, even when it looks like a mess. It asks you to accept what is, not just the peaceful moments, but also the pain, the confusion, the doubt, the silence. Because when you stop resisting what's happening, you create space for what wants to happen. And here's the crazy thing. When you truly let go of control, life starts flowing in ways you never imagined. Synchronicities multiply. Answers show up when you stop chasing them. The right people enter your life, not because you forced it, but because you finally made space. And slowly, a deep peace begins to rise. A peace not tied to circumstances. A peace that whispers, "You're held, even now, even here." This stage often brings profound emotional healing. You may find yourself crying, not from sadness, but from relief, from the realization that you've been carrying a weight you never had to carry in the first place. That's the power of surrender. It's the moment the war ends, the war with yourself, the war with your past, the war with life, and from that surrender, your actions begin to shift too. You still show up. You still make decisions. You still live your life. But now, it's from a place of alignment, not force, from intuition, not fear, from flow, not control. You stop needing to chase the path, because the path starts unfolding beneath your feet. Of course, surrender isn't a one-time thing. It's not a checkbox you tick. It's a practice, a moment-by-moment willingness to release your grip. And every day, life will show you new places where you're still holding on. Surrender asks you to meet each one with openness, patience, and trust. And when you do, something else happens. You begin to feel that your awakening is no longer yours alone. You're not just doing this for yourself. You're doing it for us. You're becoming a vessel for something much bigger than me. And that's what sets the stage for what comes next. Because now, your transformation isn't just personal. It becomes planetary. After surrender, a different kind of clarity settles in. You're no longer chasing, no longer striving to become someone else. You're just being. And from this stillness, something extraordinary begins to unfold. You realize that all the changes, every release, every insight, every painful unraveling, weren't just for your own healing. They were preparing you for something bigger. This is stage 9, integration and the beginning of collective awakening. Integration is when everything you've learned starts to land, not as lofty ideas, but as lived wisdom. The mystical moments from earlier, they're no longer rare peaks. They begin to weave into your daily life. You still feel emotions. You still make mistakes. You still face challenges. But now, you respond to those moments differently. There's a deeper sense of calm inside you, a steadiness, a witnessing quality. It's not that you've become perfect, far from it. It's just that you no longer believe every thought you think. You don't automatically react from your wounds. You've created space between the trigger and the response, and in that space, you meet life with more grace. You begin to notice that difficult conversations don't escalate the way they used to. That situations which once overwhelmed you now pass through like weather, noticed, felt, and released. This is the embodiment of awakening. Not floating in a blissful cloud 24/7, but living your truth in the messiness of real life. And that's when something shifts again. You start to feel connected, not just to the people you love, but to everyone, to everything. This is stage 10, planetary awareness. The boundaries between me and you start to blur. You look at others, even those who frustrate or hurt you, and you begin to see beyond their behavior. You see the soul, the pain behind the mask, the unhealed child behind the armor, and a deep compassion rises. Not a pitying compassion, but a fierce, tender knowing we're all doing the best we can with the level of awareness we have. This includes compassion for yourself too. You stop beating yourself up for where you are on the journey. You stop comparing your pace to others. You understand now, everyone awakens in their own time, in their own way. With this expansion comes responsibility, but not the heavy, burdensome kind. It's a natural responsibility, a heart-level knowing that your choices matter, not just for you, but for the collective. How you treat others, what you consume, where you place your energy and attention. It's not about becoming a saint or living a flawless life. It's about being conscious, about living in alignment with what you know to be true. Some people at this stage feel called into action, into activism, healing work, teaching, creating art that uplifts, or simply living with deeper integrity. Others serve just by being present, by listening fully, by walking into a room and anchoring peace. There's no one right way. What matters is that you listen to what your soul is asking you to do, because that calling, it's real. And as your sense of unity deepens, you begin to hold the world in your heart, not just your little corner of it. You feel the suffering of the planet, of humanity, of other species. And sometimes, that sensitivity can feel overwhelming. But here's the key. You learn how to care without being consumed. You develop what wisdom traditions call the open heart with strong boundaries. You learn when to act, when to rest, when to speak, when to just hold space. And through it all, your love deepens. Not the romantic kind, not the fluffy kind, but the kind that sees clearly, the kind that says, even when it's hard, I choose to stay open. I choose to stay present. This is the love that changes lives, and it's no longer just yours. It's moving through you. It's become you. And as it does, you begin to realize this whole journey was never just about waking up for your own sake. It was about becoming a light for others, a mirror, a reminder of what's possible.